Hi, thanks for checking out episode 190 of Fresh Air at 5. Can't believe it. I am at 190 episodes already. This week was a busy week as we were wrapping up details for the MyPETA Fall Conference, which was executed today on October 25th when this drops. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it so much for your listen, and it was great to connect with so many educators this week.
I'm William Andreessen, host of Speaking with Students, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwee First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video, which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week. PLN October 22, 2024, much later in the day, but hey, here we are, and recording as I listen to this afternoon and this evening episode 175 of the EdTech Throwdown with Eric and Nick. And gents, thank you so much for bringing us the episode about the British school that replaces teachers with AI. Okay, that's sensational. You caught my attention, and that's exactly what that headline did. For this school in England. It's David College, I think it's called, and they replaced one of their classrooms with an experimental process as a pilot to see how it would go. They've got 20 students and probably all quite willing to give it a go and give feedback and all that stuff with actual real teachers in the room, but they're just watching and they're there probably to make sure things don't go completely sideways, but to see how AI can educate their students. So, very curious to listen to, and that's the opening part of this episode 175 EdTech Throwdown, as the guys bring us, another reflection of theirs on the importance of us as teachers, the humans in the loop, the people that make the difference for our students, and how can we leverage artificial intelligence in our spaces. We have all these tools that can help us with feedback, with lesson creation, things like that, as a thinking partner, someone to think alongside and jog a brain cell for you if you're kind of in a stuck place. What kind of projects could you do? What kind of assignments? How can you come up with some quiz questions? What are some trivia questions that you could give your class? Openers and closers and things like that. And AI can do some of that. I asked it to give me some trivia questions tonight, and I went and corroborated that most of the answers were incorrect after AI confidently told me all of the answers. So it's important that we do still check and still are involved in the process with students and with ourselves as digital citizens in this AI age, the intelligence age. All right, that's all I got. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey, PLN, it's October 23, 2024, out for Fresh Air at 5 midday. I've got a change of work situation today, so I'm at home for a while, then I'm at school for exams this evening, and I get to go for a walk midday. It's a beautiful day. It's a fall day. The fall colors are amazing, and it's pretty wild how we can do all the things that we do because we take initiative to do those things. All right, that brings me to episode 227 of Kindsight 101 podcast with, hello, puppy. Hello. Oh, there's a puppy following me. Oh, scared me. All right. Episode 227 of Kindsight 101 podcast with Morgan Michael as she talks with a podcaster named Chip. And Morgan, I missed at the beginning of your episode where this audio was coming from to acknowledge your host that had you on his podcast. It was great to hear your story again, talking about how you, struggled when you were young to being where you are today. And it's fantastic to hear the BUILD acronym. It's fantastic to hear how you have a let's get started attitude as we get started with things. You're like, oh, a little hesitant. Well, I'm here on episode 189 right now of Fresh Air at 5 podcast because I was nudged by another to get started. I like your story about the educator who was doing his PhD and started a podcast. I think I know who that is. I'll talk to you at the MyPETA conference when I see you on Friday. Come look for me. I'm going to be in the theater with Kenneth Opal. So come find me maybe at a break or something like that, and we can connect. And I think I have an idea who that is. I'd be glad if it was. And if it wasn't, I'd like to hear who that is so I can go listen to their podcast. All right. Thank you so much, Morgan. And thank you so much, Chip, for the work that you're doing. Keep telling stories. Appreciate it. And I survived the dog attack. Well, it wasn't really a dog attack, but it surprised me. Okay, later. Bye. All right, one more thing for October 23, 2024. All right, I listened to Tech Tools for Teachers, episode 194, maybe 196. 194 or 196, it'll be in the show notes. So you can go and take a listen. In this episode, Shanna Martin and Fuzz, they talk about the National Wildlife Federation website as a complimentary website to the National Park Service website that she talked about in a previous episode. And so this is a resource that can provide a place for students to go to get information about animals, endangered animals, things like that. I don't know if it's only in North America or in the United States, but it's got lots and lots of resources that can help provide a safe place for students to go and look for information about these animals. There's a place for families and kids. There's a place for educators. Looks like there's probably even a gift shop that you could go and buy some swag. That's super cool. All right, so that's pretty fun. Thank you, Shanna, for sharing with us. Look at these fall colors. Love the fall colors. It's just amazing. I'm excited to have Shannon come as an online presenter to our MyPETA Fall Conference this coming Friday. So, Shanna, looking forward to connecting with you somehow. I don't know if I'm going to be able to be in your session. I don't think so, because I've got to be in the theater doing some technical stuff with our presenter. But I hopefully will be able to watch the recording. Are you recording a session? I hope so, so that I can watch it. That's pretty selfish. But all the other educators that are at the conference that have access to the online stuff can be able to watch that, hopefully. So thanks so much, Shanna, for participating here in British Columbia and making a difference in educators' lives here in BC on the West Coast. All right, take care, have a fabulous day, and take a listen to Tech Tools for Teachers with Shanna Martin. All right, bye. All right, the last thing for October 23, 2024. Oh, dog attack again. They're behind a fence. On this episode, I'm listening to, I got distracted, it's hilarious. Season 5, episode 8 of Teach Happier with Suzanne Daly. Suzanne brings us an episode called Try to Try. And it's about a story of her working with the grade 2s class in her school about learning about the concept of grit and what is grit. And you know, as adults, do we get what grit is? We get it's about sticking to it, perseverance, working really hard, not quitting, doing all those things. And, but how do you explain that to a little person? She has a beautiful story in here about how she talks to the second graders with a piece of wood and some sandpaper. You got to listen. I'm not going to spoil it here. I'm not going to spoil it. Go listen to Teach Happier, Try to Try episode, and listen to what Suzanne has to say. It's so important that we recognize that it's about trying to try. Trying to try is a sign that we have some grit. Doing is super important, but if we don't try, we'll never get to do. And so, I know Master Yoda said, it's not about try or try not, it's about do. And you know what? He was right. But if we don't give it a shot and give it a try, we'll never know if we can do. So the doing for him, Master Yoda, is the trying to try, I think. All right, a connection to Star Wars. All right, Suzanne Daly and company, and all the people, have yourself a fantastic day. Oh yeah, this is the end of today's listening that I'm going to do. Thanks so much. Bye. Hey, PLN, it's October 24, 2024. Out for fresh air at 5 this morning. It's 5 degrees Celsius. There is some thin overhead cloud to the west, but it is clear to the east. You can see Orion in the sky, and it's a beautiful, calm morning. All right, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to episode 111 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller. And Jake, glad to hear your voice again, and I am inspired by what you bring. So inspired, I used your buffalo analogy that you shared back in the summer in a keynote that I gave recently, and it was an insightful analogy about facing the storms in our lives. Today's analogy you bring us is baby steps. Take baby steps into things, but you remind us that babies are adept at falling and getting back up. They are adept at, falling down and then right away getting back up, and doesn't faze them. Whereas as adults, if we have to learn to walk and we're taking baby steps, we fall down and it hurts. It hurts, and our pride, probably one of those things, probably hurts our bodies, but we need to get back up and carry on. It's where resilience comes in learning. And so I like that analogy that you bring us. For more of that analogy and the thoughts of it and the conscious competence that comes from learning from our unconscious incompetence, and there are 4 stages of that. Take a listen to Jake. All right, later in the episode, you talk with Amy Storer about the difference between, a replacement for Jamboard, a Google tool that disappeared recently. As of October 1st, it's not able to be created anymore and will disappear forever at the end of December. And you and Amy talk about the opportunity for using 2 different tools. One is Padlet Sandbox, and the other is FigJam from Figma. And I got to check out both of these. That sounds fantastic. And another one that might be Whiteboard in Microsoft. So I got to look at that as well. Thanks so much, Jake. Thanks so much, Amy. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. One more thing for October 24, 2024. This morning I'm traveling, headed to Victoria for the My PETA Fall Conference that we are running at Royal Bay Secondary, having a number of speakers come and people from all over the province. So excited about that. As I'm driving this morning, I listened to Season 4, Episode 11 of Seeing to Lead podcast with Dr. Chris Jones and his colleague Craig Shapiro, as they have a podcast that they bring us called Small Nuggets, Big Change. And on the podcast, they propose an idea to each other, and then they respond, don't listen to each other's comments, and then put it together and bring it to us here. So this is a quick listen, so take a listen to what they've got to say. Today's prompt was get out of the pond. And so each of them gave their reflection about what that means, talks about getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your place of comfort, being your pond, about stretching yourself and setting some goals so that you can go beyond your place of comfort and grow for yourself. I like the idea of hanging out with people that are smarter than you and wiser than you, and that you may feel like you're a little inferior, but you know what, as we hang out and spend time in these spaces of wisdom and intelligence and skills that we don't have, we grow and we get better at our craft ourselves, and we improve our character. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate that. Why am I going to Victoria? Because I've stepped into an opportunity to do professional development in our province with a group of educators that meet with the grade 3 to grade 8 teachers of the province, and we provide professional development through the course of a couple of conferences a year, our website, and some other opportunities for connection of the middle school teachers in British Columbia. And so this is something I'm pretty passionate about, and it's one of my get out of the pond things. There's other things going on. You know anything about me, you can see a few of those. Thanks so much, gents. Appreciate it, and take a listen to this episode. Okay, bye. One more thing for October 24, 2024, I'm on the BC Ferry, headed over to Victoria, British Columbia. It's a beautiful day for a ferry ride, so I'm pretty excited about that. As I was driving still, and as I arrived here at the ferry, I listened to Season 2, Episode 20 of the Blending In podcast with host Ashley Yazarlu, who I met at Spring Q last year in California, and she has on guest Laurel Kirchhoff, and they talk about casting a wider net and looking for opportunities beyond where you're sitting at, and how we get nervous about taking a step and trying something more than what we do. So this is a great podcast. They talk about blending technology with learning and how we need to stay in keep it current and relevant for my students. And sometimes there's a place for, just using technology because we're exploring and learning how to use some technology, but we need to make sure that it stays grounded and stays to the purpose of what we're trying to get at with our students. Ashley, thanks so much for the work that you do in California. Thanks for bringing us this episode with Laurel, as there's a lot of great things to hear in here. Laurel, you talk about classroom management and classroom rules and changing that name just alone to classroom procedures and strategies or something like that. But don't call it the rules, but expectations and procedures. So this is an opportunity for us to change the language of how we and what we do with our students, so that they feel more supported and engaged in the place. And it's not my classroom as a teacher, but our classroom as learners. Demonstrate that learning in front of your students. Show them that, you can learn things and we can share together, and I can learn something from you, because it's so important that as teachers, we have a posture of humility when it comes to learning, because our students are forced into a posture of humility as they are the students and we are the educational authority over them, and we need to not be buddies with them, but we need to make sure that we're supporting them well. Thanks all. That's all for now. I got another 1 or 2 podcasts to listen to today. Peace. Bye. The last thing for October 24, 2024. I'm standing outside Royal Bay Secondary School as my PETA is having our fall conference tomorrow, and we set up this evening for the event for tomorrow. But earlier today, before I got here for setup for a conference, I listened to the Two Principals podcast, episode number 98, as Kevin Jost and Jason Paris brought us a discussion about navigating awkward conversations. And they talked about, the awkward conversations are when you have parents that come into your school about their students and need to talk to you as a principal. And what's your job as a leader, and how do you care for the student and care for the parents in that awkward situation where it could have been a discipline issue, could have been an academic integrity or academic, progress issue, and things like that, as they have, concerns as parents. And what do you do about that? It's about making connections. They got lots of great advice in here about using active listening and about, just making sure the parents feel heard in this process, because not feeling heard, keeps things escalated. And so if we can convey in these awkward conversations, even as teachers having conversations with parents, that can be helpful to make sure that we are hearing them, asking, them what they would do to change the situation, et cetera, like that. So, great episode. Take a listen for yourself. Episode 98, the Two Principals podcast. And with that, I'm wrapping it for today. I'll see you in the morning for the wrap-up of episode 189 of Fresh Air at 5. Good night. APLN October 25, 2024. It's showtime today. So today is the day that our MyPETA Fall Conference, Middle School and Primary Intermediate Teachers Association in British Columbia, has our fall conference. And I'm privileged to serve with a wonderful group of people that put on Pro-D here in our province for our teachers. And it's fantastic to be able to be part of something that is much bigger than yourself, and you contribute and see the fruit of that work. It's a lot of work to do these things, but it's so rewarding. Last night I sat down with Victoria Walters and Nadine Keysworth and John Fass after I got back to the hotel, and we went out for a beverage and sat and chatted about life and all the things, and it was fantastic to have that opportunity to connect. So without the fall conference, it wouldn't have provided, it would have been hard to get together with those three people. And I really appreciate it. So, hey, shout out to you, John. Thanks for listening this morning. And yes, all right, this morning as I am walking, I listened to the Resilient Teacher, episode 116 with Brittany Blackwell, as she has on guests Joe and Kristen Merrill, as she was at ISTE back in June and had a chance to talk with them about the work that they do with the interactive classroom. And they talked about how it's so important to have students engaged in their learning and the creative part of their learning as opposed to the consumption part of their learning. And so how can we have them demonstrate with these tools and ed tech that we have to see the product of what they are making? I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer that kids can create. And so the level of creation and the mode of creation, that is what needs to be discovered. With artificial intelligence in our classrooms, and they're working with younger kids, like elementary school kids, how can AI support their learning, through coaching alongside the writing process and provide some creative stuff. They talked about burnout and how they walk through that, and that's all. So take a listen to that episode of The Resilient Teacher, episode 118 with Brittany Blackwell. Thanks. Last thing for October 25, 2024. Yep. It's conference day. So excited. Love conference day because of the connections with people that I make. I love teaching. I love my everyday job because of the connections with my students that I make on a regular basis. And I was away from school yesterday, and, having to have a TOC come into my classroom so that I can be away doing conference prep and travel and that kind of stuff, it just, it hurts because it's about the relationships with my students that I miss. It's not the work that I'm going to give them, not the learning that I'm going to teach them, but the fact that I'm missing seeing my students. So that's a beginning point that George and Anne-Marie Fauclaut talk about on the Innovator's Mindset, 3 questions for educators. And this episode dropped just this week. And, the 3 questions that George has asked, he asked me those questions a while ago on his podcast when I was a guest doing 3 questions. And it was really cool to hear him ask these questions because it's like, who's a teacher that made a difference in your life? Who's an administrator that made a difference in your life? And what's some advice you would give yourself as a first-year teacher, now that you've been doing this for a while? And so that is one of those things that, what would you say to yourself? What advice would you give? And Anne-Marie talks about that for the advice that the content is not as important at the beginning of your career as connection is. And so the connection with students, building that connection, that relationship is a starting point, a stepping off point, so that you can effectively deliver the content. If we come in guns blazing with content without having a relationship, it doesn't matter. And that's what I hear from her other 2 parts, as she talks about the administrator that made a difference and also the teacher that made a difference. Geometry was really tough, but he said, you just got to keep on going, and I'm here with you to walk with you through this experience. All right, George, thanks so much. Appreciate you. And yes, enjoy the conferencing and keynoting that you're doing. Appreciate the work that you do out there in education, and keep on telling stories. Okay, bye. I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself because you are worth it.